This is the Power Break podcast number 081 titled The Broken Tooth Syndrome. Hi, I'm Bob Brubaker along with JT as we hope you'll stay tuned as we seek to give you a little power in this break to help you succeed in the race of life.
This is the Power Break podcast with a focus on the spiritual, the mental, and the physical aspects, all to help you succeed in the race of life. For show notes from today's podcast, go to bobbrubaker.com and follow the link for the Power Break podcast. What's up, Bob?
Well, I've got something to start out this. Have you ever heard of a Nappuccino?
No, but if it has anything to do with taking a nap, I'm in right now because I'm tired.
Okay, yeah. What a great day to bring this up. I heard this on another podcast, Nappuccino. Okay, and what you do is, this has been proven to be a really good move because, so say in the afternoon you had just a short period to nap, say like 20 or 30 minutes.
Right.
Okay, so what you do is you drink a cup of coffee right before you would go to sleep. Like they say,
I'm already suspicious of this, but go ahead.
Okay, so what happens is, it's been shown that it takes about 20 minutes for the coffee to take effect in your body. So that means if you can take the nap, then you'll be awakened in 20 minutes and you'll feel fresh because you have taken a nap, but you won't have that grogginess from taking a nap. You'll be fresh and ready to go.
I think somebody's a goofacino. That's what I think. A nappuccino, man.
Nappuccino!
All right. You know something? I'm going to try that just to see whether that really works or not.
Of course, see, working when I guess you could in the middle of the afternoon, although you change your shift, so you go in the afternoon.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be good if I took
that would be right when you start your
nap.
shift.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
Having an officer of the law sleeping on the job. No, well, okay. Let's just, by the way, as we start this program today, let's just thank everybody for their ratings and review and for listening to the Power Break podcast. We appreciate that, and for your telling others by word of mouth or by social media, however you do, we appreciate it very much.
Yes, very much so. And like I said, it's always humbling. And if you guys are getting anything out of it, please get on there and give us a review if you can. We would really appreciate it. It makes it easier for people to find our podcast.
That's exactly
that are searching
right.
for it.
So I got a question for you. Have you ever broken a tooth?
Yes. When I was very young, I broke my front tooth.
Ooh.
Yeah. It was good. I broke it right after my brother said, "Don't do that. You're probably going to break your teeth." And he was right. Yeah.
How about it? You've ever had a joint out of place?
I have. Yep. I've had dislocated fingers and all kinds of good stuff from football.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how that? Why did we ever play those sports? Well, it's manly stuff.
I think the women in our life would probably tell us the answer to that, and I don't know if I want to hear it. It's probably because, I am who I am.
Yeah, that's right.
Big, stubborn ox.
Yeah.
So how about you, man? Have you ever had any kind of a broken tooth or?
Yeah, I broke a tooth one time. I didn't break it out; I just knocked it loose, and then I had to be capped off because it kind of died or something. I had to have a root canal. Like an idiot when I was in high school. That's back in the days. Remember the old Corvairs?
Oh, yeah, I sure do.
This guy had a convertible, and he was coming up the hill in front of our house, and I said, "Tell you what, why don't you just slow down and I'll just jump out?"
Yeah, that wasn't smart.
My face hit the ground so fast.
Yeah,
that was really a dumb move. And I walked in the house. My dad said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I think I fell down." Duh.
Yeah. I wonder why. Yeah.
And believe it or not, when I first had information that right after I got my first slot in the Ironman World Championship. Okay, it's about 6 months before that, and a friend of mine I talked into doing a 10-mile run in the woods.
Yeah.
And as we were running down this place in the woods, I dislocated my ankle.
Yeah.
And I stepped on a root, but I put it back in place.
And immediately stopped, right?
No,
of course not.
No, Bob didn't do that. I said, "Well, I could go home and take Advil, or I could produce endorphins by just continuing to run." Like an idiot, I did that.
Great decision.
Yeah. Anyway, did you know? Here you go. Here's where we're going today. That unfaithfulness in fulfilling commitments causes a person to experience the same type of pain as a broken tooth or a foot out of joint.
Ouch, man. Yeah.
Ooh.
No, you're right, though. You're absolutely right.
Well, that's what we want to discuss today, because living up to commitments in life is taken very lightly today by people that make commitments and don't keep them. And the perspective that we want to look at today is considering how a lack of dedication on our part to our commitments, what it does to the other person. Now, there's a little scripture in the book of Proverbs 25, verse 19, in the King James. It says, confidence in an unfaithful man in a time of trouble is like a broken tooth or a foot out of joint.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then you can combine that with, if you can be trusted with little, you can be trusted with much. I can't tell you how many people fall into the category in my life. I can't even trust them with the little stuff.
Yeah, well,
so I certainly can't.
Before recording today, we've kind of gone over the fact that many people don't live up to commitments today, and so that's what we want to encourage people to do as we continue this discussion here of the broken tooth syndrome.
Yeah, because if you're not connected, how can you really do the work of Christ if you're not connected?
There you go.
It's
all about commitment.
It is. It's all about commitment. Amy and I just had an experience with Gabriel's birthday party, and this to me is just kind of a sign of the times, right? I mean, over half of the people that committed to coming, RSVP'd, said they were coming, over half of those people didn't show up.
Isn't that sad?
Didn't even send a text saying why or nothing, just didn't show. That was
wow.
it. Yeah, and to me, I can't even wrap my mind around doing that.
Yeah, you make a commitment. You're a man of your word. That's a man of integrity.
You got to show up. You got to get it done, right?
I remember on that subject several years ago. I was doing a wedding for a couple. Okay, and at the time of the wedding, I mean, people made commitments to come to the wedding, sent out invitations, and they had people that said that we're going to come, and it was supposed to be several hundred people there, so the place was all ready for them. And the time of the wedding came, and nobody showed up.
Nobody.
And
Unbelievable.
so we put it off for a half an hour. And at the end of half an hour, a couple of people straggled in. And we went ahead with the wedding. And as the wedding progressed, which would have been close to an hour later than it was published, some people were there, but most people were not. I felt really bad for the couple.
It's awful. And that, to me, is the sign of just how incredibly selfish we've become. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't feel like doing it, so I'm just not going to. Okay. The world apparently revolves just around you.
Yeah.
But you're never going to make a relationship with another human being if you can't make a commitment to them.
You can't keep your commitments.
Ever. Yeah. So, let's keep talking about that as we turn to your published article titled The Broken Tooth Syndrome. And folks, if you want to get a hold of that article, it's at BobBrubaker.com. If you want to sign up and subscribe, it'll come to you every Monday like it does for me. And it's just a great start to the week for me. But we really need to keep talking about this because this is important stuff.
It is.
This is really bread and butter, staying connected with other people, Great Commission kind of stuff. So
I like how you brought in the bread and butter when we're talking about broken tooth, Anyway, I began the article by saying, just picture this. You take your seat in your favorite restaurant awaiting the opportunity in order to get the steak that you ordered, for which you've been longing for some time. Your mouth is just watering as you place your order in anticipation of the first bite. And then the food arrives, and after expressing thanksgiving to God, you cut off the first bite and you lift the fork to your mouth as the aroma overwhelms your olfactory sense, causing your taste buds to rise to the occasion in anticipation. But just as you close your mouth, awaiting the sensation of taste, something very wrong takes place and your tooth breaks.
Yeah, man, that's wrong in every way right there.
What was going to be a moment of bliss turns into a disgust and trouble as you scramble to sort out the pieces of broken tooth and to find relief from the pain. Now, the Bible uses this very description to show us how at any time we fail to live up to our commitments, we cause a similar pain to those who are counting on us. Confidence in an unfaithful man, it says in Proverbs 25, verse 19, in a time of trouble is like a broken tooth or a foot out of joint. Now, let's go to your illustration in Gabriel's party.
Yeah.
Okay, you planned for those people to be there.
For sure. And we paid for them to be there, too, on top of it.
Okay, so when they just didn't show up, they didn't live up to their commitments. They're unfaithful to their commitments.
Yep.
Okay, they never thought of anything about it.
Yep.
Because their life goes on. But you, who were counting on them, felt the pain.
Yep, for sure.
Now, before we deal with the subject of not living up to commitments, let me first say that it must be recognized that sometimes, as I said in the article, there are legitimate reasons for not fulfilling commitments. So I don't want to lump all these things together. But as you said, when you can't fulfill your commitment, at least letting people know.
Well, there it is. There's a process. It's one thing if you are constantly the guy that's calling saying, hey, I'm not going to make it. Hey, I'm not going to make it. Hey, I'm not going to make it. That's a problem.
Yeah.
But if something legitimately comes up, and that's not a pattern in your life, there's still an etiquette, right? There's still a responsibility to other people that you need to fulfill, right?
I always think about what we were talking about before we hit the record button today, that sometimes, dads make commitments to their children and never live up to them. And what does it teach a child? Well, anyway, let's notice how the person who does not live up to commitments is described as unfaithful, or another version called treacherous even. The Bible is very serious about this subject. It's a matter that is often passed over in our modern era because there seems to be once a time when people so lived up to their word with their contracts and their commitments that even legitimate legal contracts were rarely signed. Your word was good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandfather's generation was all about the handshake.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, this is a really cool story, and I'll keep it very short. But the land that my family owned right next to Foxborough Stadium, the old Foxborough Stadium where the Patriots used to play, now it's Gillette Stadium, we owned it through a handshake.
No way, really?
Yes. The agreement was between the guy who ran the racetrack that was right next to Foxborough Stadium and my grandfather.
Wow.
He said, as long as you run this racetrack, this land is yours. Well,
wow.
The problem with that was as soon as everybody that was there for that contract died, it was null and void.
Oh, my.
So guess
that
what?
Was the problem. So your family lost the...
We lost all that land.
Property. Yeah. You'd probably not be here today. You'd be living high on the hog somewhere up in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Probably not. I probably would have blown it in some way, shape, or form. But yeah.
All right. I always like to tell this story. There was this old preacher, because preachers really feel the effect of this. I can't emphasize that enough. Pastors people in churches feel the effect of this unfaithful to commitments today over and over. So there's the story that I like to tell. There's this old preacher that went calling upon a deacon who was being unfaithful to his commitments and neglecting even the worship of God. So the pastor went to him and asked him directly, he says, hey, you've been missing the assembly of the saints at the church. What's going on? The deacon thought for a moment and he just said, well, there's buttermilk in the fridge. And the pastor says, wait a minute, what does buttermilk in the fridge have to do with you being unfaithful to your commitments? He says, well, one excuse is as lame as another.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
Yeah, that is the truth.
No matter what we come up to justify our unfaithfulness to our commitments, it's a lame excuse. Well, one old guy said if people gave as much effort to fulfill their commitments as they do in making excuses why they don't, they would actually live up to their word.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just got to understand how we are meant to interact with each other. We are all here in the same place at the same time for interaction with each other.
Yeah.
We weren't born to be, just isolated in our own little world that only involves what we want. That's a very sick and sinful place to sit.
That is exactly right. So this whole article is about taking a self-inspection, looking at your own commitments and looking at it from the person who received your commitment in the first place. It's a matter of integrity, and it says in Proverbs 11 and verse 3, the integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. In Proverbs 20, verse 7, the righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after them. So stop and think about it. When you live your life of commitment, you are teaching your children to do likewise.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, my father taught me that.
Yep.
And so here's the epitome of commitment. Before I went to play football at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, I had made a commitment to come up on a Saturday to be there to sign before the coaches this letter of intent,
nice.
Right?
Yeah,
and
cool.
To attend the hockey game. Okay, and so my father and I we're going up together on that Saturday to do that. And it was about a 2.5-hour drive from where we lived in Northeast Ohio to go to Northwest Ohio to Bowling Green State University. Well, there was a blizzard that set in. Okay, now most people would have said,
yeah, that's the excuse that probably is okay.
Yeah. Okay, my father said, did you make that commitment? And I said, yes. He said, we're going. So we drove through a blizzard to get there. And it was interesting because the coaches didn't show up, and somebody called and said, by the way, Bob Brubaker is here because
to sign his letter of commitment.
Letter of intent.
Apparently, you're not committed to it.
No, they came and they did everything what they were supposed to do. They just figured that I had a logical excuse. Yeah. There's a blizzard between my house and Bowling Green State University, and then so we did, and so I'm very thankful. My father taught me that if you've made your word about something, you keep it. Do it.
Yeah. And you know, what an awesome story, number one. And number two, what a great example. And number three, the reason why I love your dad so much is because he is a stubborn mule just like me and you. Wasn't he? Yeah.
We're all cut out of the same.
Hey, we made the commitment. Let's go. Yeah. Right That's up there with I paid for the fat too. You better eat that.
Yeah. All right. So we might ask ourselves the question, what's the trouble behind unfulfilled commitments? Maybe the fact that we're too quick to commit to many people is too many things, so we either cannot fulfill or have no intention of fulfilling. That's where a lot of people today, they just say yes to it and just blow it off.
And I've been guilty of the same thing. Sure.
Either way, our actions or lack thereof cause pain in others, and therefore giving greater consideration before you make a commitment, but when you do, make sure you live up to it. There's a text of Scripture in Ecclesiastes 5, verse 4 says, when you make a vow, your vow is actually to God. So even if I make a commitment to you, JT, then it's really before God, and so it's to God.
What's an incredible – that's a great way to look at it because it really is that important.
Yeah. Your word is your word. Anyway, check it out. It's called the Broken Tooth Syndrome. The entire article is at bobbrubaker.com, and we like to say that as JT says each time, when you go there to check out the Power Break blog and the articles on bobbrubaker.com, be sure to sign up for the weekly MailChimp delivery of the Power Break.
The MailChimp. So what else is going on, Bob? Anything new?
Just wanted to reemphasize the fact that during this time, we think about love and marriage and stuff because it's into February, and February, of course, is time for Valentine's Day. And so I would encourage you to check out my book it's actually the book that Jan and I wrote together called Strength Training for Your Love Life.
Nice.
And it's a 30-day marriage challenge, and what a great time to think about that. Check it out at bobbrubaker.com. It's called Strength Training for Your Love Life. You click on the resources at the top, and you scroll down. It says books. Click on that, and then scroll through the books, and you'll see the blue cover with a picture of Jan and me on the front. It's called Strength Training for Your Love Life. And while you're at bobbrubaker.com, check out the sermon links to the sermons I preach here at Christ Community Presbyterian Church. It's all at bobbrubaker.com.
All right. So here we go, my friend. It is time for What About This? If you're just tuning into this show, folks, or you're new to the podcast, that is our time for question and answers on the podcast. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at jt@bobbrubaker.com, and we'll get to answering your questions on an upcoming Power Break podcast.
And be sure to ask about whether JT is taking advantage of Nappuccinos.
That's right. And I'm also waiting for somebody to tell me my race goal. So
I still think that one of the goals could be that you could pick up your bicycle and ride with us across Florida this year.
Yeah, you think that's a good goal? That is a good goal.
I mean, you're a tough enough guy that you could pick up, even if you haven't had the mileage, you could survive the first day of 120 miles, the second day of 100. You could do it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I also don't want to do it and be completely miserable. So I would rather have some training underneath my belt for sure.
Well, let's see. It's 8 weeks away, 9 weeks away at this point during our time of recording, I think. So there's something you could do.
No, let me think about that, Bob. I'm not going to make my commitment yet.
What a sly dude, man!
Bam!
Yeah.
Hey, let my yes be yes and my no be no.
But I just want to say that it's always good to have you along.
It's always good to be there, man. It really is. Yeah. You know the time of life. So there's always seasons. So.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 1. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. As we talk about living our commitments out in our life, would you consider it a spiritual activity, even if it doesn't have anything to do with the church or the Lord or your commitment to your small group or anything like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is. Any commitment, as I pointed out from Ecclesiastes 5 verse 4, says when you make a vow, you're making a vow to God, and do not delay in paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. So pay what you vow. That's why James says, above all things, do not swear either by heaven or earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, so that you may not fall into condemnation. Now, you've mentioned earlier the text of Scripture in the book of Luke chapter 16 and verse 10 where Jesus says, he that is faithful in little things will be faithful in much. He that is unfaithful in little things will be unfaithful in much.
Yeah.
So, there's an example when the apostles said to the Lord Jesus Christ, they said, Lord, increase our faith. And notice what he did. First of all, he gives an example. I love this. He says, if you had faith as a grain of mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted by this and planted in the seed, it would obey you. So in other words, faith accomplishes much in our lives.
Right.
He's not looking for us to change the landscape, but what he is saying, there are obstacles in our way that will not stop us if we have faith.
Right.
Even if as small as a grain of mustard seed, if you've ever seen one, it's almost microscopic, but they're very small.
Teeny.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was doing a Bible study one time, and I brought a little bag full of them. I gave each one a mustard seed. And it was in no time people dropped them.
I was going to say they lost them immediately because they're so small.
Yeah. So there must have been a mustard seed trees planted all over the place. Probably not. They were probably vacuumed up. Anyway, so he says, okay, the faith is really important. Listen to what he says about faithfulness then. He says, will any of you who has a servant plowing or keeping sheep will say to him when he has come in from the field, come at once and recline at my table? No, he says. Will he rather say to him, prepare supper for me and dress properly and serve me when I eat and drink, and afterwards you will eat and drink? Does he thank that servant because he did what was commanded? He says, no. You also then, when you have done all that you're commanded to do, say, we are unprofitable servants, we're unworthy servants, we've done just what our duty was to do. Wow. So what is he saying? Your faith is actually increased in your faithfulness, even to the smallest thing. So when you're living out your commitments, be it Gabriel's party, or be it whatever commitment that you have made, you as a dad, you've told your boys you're going to do something, I know what you do, you live up to it.
I do it, yeah.
Okay? Because you made that commitment. And so that teaches them the importance of being faithful even in little commitments that you made. And what that does is carry over to our faithfulness to God. But we also know because our vow, whatever we make a vow in life, it's actually before God, and he takes notice of it. So yes, every little commitment in life that we set out and make it a point to keep those commitments are very important.
Yep. You know, I last year I had been asked to teach the officers during our in-service. Mm-hmm. I'd been asked to teach them what's called solo response to active shooter. So basically, you know, they get their first on scene to an active shooter or active assailant incident, and I teach them tactics on how to go in by themselves if their backup isn't close, right? So I was asked to do that. So the only thing I had asked in return was, hey, listen, you know, this is going to be after hours because I was working day shift. It's like, can I get overtime for that? That would be nice. They said, oh, yeah, definitely. You can definitely get overtime. I was like, okay, great. So 1 week out after I did all the preparation, did all the lesson plans, they said, hey, we're not going to be able to give you overtime. We're going to make you flex your hours. I said, okay. I said, can I ask why? And they said, well, you know, there's some budgetary concerns, and, you know, that's a lot of money. I was like, okay. I was like, so that's going to affect everybody? I said, oh, yeah. Didn't affect anybody else but me. And I was super upset, but I still fulfilled that commitment.
You lived up to your commitment because you said you'd do it.
Of course I did. And other people were counting on me that weren't the people that were taking away my money.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So regardless of how upset I was, I had made that commitment and I was going to see it through. Now, would I make that commitment to those people again? The answer would be no.
That's another podcast.
Another podcast.
But I would be quick to point out, JT, but what you did is a faith-building action. Mm-hmm. Living up to your commitments.
Yeah, you're absolutely
faith-building.
Right.
So, when we take the Christians who is not so apt to fulfill their commitments, they're actually taking away from faith-building process that the Lord Jesus Christ has set in their lives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, question number 2. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. How should we approach our commitments mentally to make sure that we are avoiding experiencing a broken tooth or displaced foot, for lack of a better way to put it?
Well, yeah, I guess it goes two ways. We don't want to experience that ourselves, and we don't want someone else to experience it. Right. So when ourselves, we just make sure mentally, if I've made that commitment, I'm going to keep it. We don't even think about the difference. It's just like in marriage, one of the things you do in marriage, you are never to talk about or even think about the divorce.
Yep.
I mean, you think about, I've made a commitment. Yep. This is a lifelong commitment. Right. So when you make a commitment to, whether your kids are going to Gabriel's party, poor Gabe, was he upset? He probably didn't even think about it, did he?
Not the way I did. He just asked, he goes, blah, blah, blah was supposed to be here, because I don't want to say names on the podcast. Such and such was supposed to be here. I was like, something, I think something came up. Their mom probably sent a text to your mom or whatever.
Yeah, probably console him.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want him to see that either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it broke his heart, I'm sure.
Wow. But anyway, so to look at that, we must think about the fact that, as we say on this podcast all the time, discipline makes the difference in all aspects of life. And that's a personal discipline to live up to your commitments.
Yeah, for sure. And, in my experience, you don't always like people. You don't always get along with everybody. Everybody's, we're all very unique. And, as Christ says, we're all different parts of the church, right? Mm-hmm. We're all different members of the same body. But you're not always going to get along with each other. But I will tell you, the people that I gravitate around, even if I don't get along with them, are people that I know I can count on.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will count in people that I don't see eye to eye with all the time, because I know that they're going to be there. They're going to put 100% into it. And I may end up learning a lot from them just because they are committed.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's not about whether you get along with people. It's about your commitment that people really notice and people really gravitate towards, I think. And I don't know if we put enough credit on that.
I'm in the process of reading a book by a friend of mine, Gary Yeagle, down in the Miami area. He's really involved in men's ministry. Yep. And he's writing. He wrote this book called. The subject is about "I've Got Your Back," and nice. The need for men to have someone in their lives who has their back. Yeah, that they're close. Like you're that with me, man.
Oh, and you are definitely that with me, man. Yeah,
anyway,
100%.
Discipline does make the difference, because we say that you're careful about, first of all, what you're committing to, and when you've made that commitment, you also realize that it's hard to say this, but sometimes people don't live up to their commitment, and sometimes that broken tooth or foot out of joint feeling that you have when they're not doing that, living up to their commitment, you have to avoid turning bitter about it.
Oh, for sure. And that's the hard part.
That is.
So knowing that, what I try to do is make sure I never put somebody in the position to where they have to make the effort to not be bitter towards a decision I made.
Unfortunately, sometimes it means you do the follow-up work that, before you meet with them, knowing that they may not have it together, that right. you make the extra effort to confirm with them.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's right.
You feel bad about having to do that, but hey,
Yeah. Hey, are we still on for later? Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Anyway, take a look at it, and what we're getting at in the mental standpoint is, from a mental standpoint, you apply discipline. Whether you are the one person making commitments or the one receiving commitments from others, the discipline is on both sides.
Yep, for sure. All right. Question number 3. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to turn to the physical. And man, I wish we had asked this last week, because this whole restaurant thing gets me sometimes when I'm forced to eat out. Like in training, I was forced to eat out this week. What's the best tip about losing weight when you have to eat out?
Well, this is a hard one, but I found this article on, I forget where I saw it on the internet, but these things are pretty good. First of all, ask the restaurant, when you're eating at a restaurant, ask them not to bring the bread or the chips, or at least do not ask for refills.
You mean I just can't sit there and graze? Come on.
This is a tip that really does work. I remember when this was popular back in the late 70s. And when your food arrives, immediately ask for a box and take half of what you have, your portion, and box it up.
Wow, that's a good one.
So you only have half the amount on your plate. A third area is to eat slowly. And then the fourth one is to avoid desserts altogether. As we mentioned earlier, you might bring some dark chocolate along. So how about you, JT? What do you do if you want to avoid gaining weight or losing weight while you're eating out?
Well, the big thing is to have good company with you. Yeah, that's a good. And the reason why I say that is because the more I talk, the less I eat. Yeah,
very good.
Yeah. But this reminds me of a story about my grandmother. Man, she was.
And now another story with Granny.
So funny. So we used to go to this place. It was, I think it was called the Porter House. It was right by Foxborough Stadium in Massachusetts. It was really, really. It was a nice place to eat. But they had these biscuits that my grandmother loved. The very first thing that she would do as soon as the biscuits would get there, and this helped me lose weight, but it probably helped her gain weight ultimately, was she would pull out a plastic bag as soon as the waiter took off, and she would take all the biscuits and put them in that plastic bag and then put them in her purse. That was like the size of like a normal person's suitcase. And then the waiter Then the waiter would come back, and the waiter would have, he'd have all the drinks in, and he'd always look down like, man, they ate all these biscuits already? This is crazy. Sir, can we have some more biscuits? So she would do that one more time, and then her purse would be full, and then we were allowed to eat.
Okay. I will match that with a story that when I was in Mississippi serving a church, one of our students went to Mississippi State University, and we went to visit him one time. We took him out to eat, and he goes, I like coming to this place. I usually come and just get rolls. It just rolls and water.
That's it.
And because they had the biscuit.
And the waiter's like, I hate that guy.
And he did the same thing that your granny did while we were eating there, because he just kept filling this little bag that he carried with him, and all these rolls. Those yeast rolls are really good anyway.
Because she was a depression baby, man. She did a lot of really funny things like that. She'd be like, something for free. I'm going to put that in my.
Well, as we're talking about the physical, of course, losing weight and applying these things when you do go out to eat, discipline does make the difference, as we say, in all aspects of life. Check out today's show notes at BobBrubaker.com. Click on the Power Break podcast. Today is show number 081.
And submit your questions by email to jt@bobrubaker.com and listen for Bob's answer on an upcoming Power Break podcast.
Before we leave from here today, I just want to encourage everyone to pray for your friends as you think about sharing the gospel with someone else. It begins with prayer. I wrote a little book about it called The Breastplate of Remembrance, just so that you remember that when you go to the throne of grace on your own behalf each day, that you think about your friends. And so as the priest went before the God, he had a breastplate with 12 stones in it, and those 12 stones represented the 12 tribes of Israel. So he never forgot who he's representing. And just to think about representing your friends and neighbors, people that you care about, that they would come to the Lord Jesus Christ. It begins with prayer, and the little book helps you think about those things. It's called The Breastplate of Remembrance. Check it out at BobBrubaker.com.
Well, thank you for joining us for the Power Break podcast. Please subscribe and leave a review wherever you've downloaded the podcast. And check out show notes, news, Bob's weekly blog, and other cool things at BobBrubaker.com. And listen next time for the Power Break podcast.